And if you want the slides from the presentation today, you can send me an email. I will share the slides with you as well. Cool. So otherwise, if you have your own tips, you have your own insights, I would love to have you share your insights as well. There's going to be a lot of content that I'll be covering today, but I hope that I'm not the only person who's the expert in the room, and that everyone really shares their own knowledge as well. And yeah, be respectful, make sure that whatever comments you make are inclusive, they're not discriminatory, and just have some fun today. So let me just check something really quickly. Right. Oops. So I like to start things off with community announcements. So what I do with these is it's an open forum for anyone who is participating to share anything interesting that's happening, anything in terms of events that are happening in the community. If you have upcoming programs, upcoming workshops that you want to share, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking to hire, these kind of things, feel free to share with the audience. I can kick it off. There are two big things I want to quickly share. So one is actually this weekend. Applications are still open, and it's actually free to participate. There is a startup weekend happening. So for those of you who are not familiar with Startup Weekend is a hackathon. And a hackathon is basically an event where it's a whole weekend long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and people form teams, they pitch their ideas, and they work together with their teams to build a product. So it is somewhat tech-centric, and it's actually run by Techstars Canada. And what's going to happen during the hackathon is it's focused around COVID solutions. So it's free to participate if you have ideas around starting a startup, or if you just want to participate and get into that working environment where you work with tech people, business people, designers, then it's actually a really fun event to participate in. I've joined 2 events myself, and I'm actually going to be a kind of sub-facilitator for this weekend as well. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up, and let me just find the link for those who are interested. And I will post it here as well. Startup. And I will post it in the chat. I will send it on the email as well. And I'll read some intros. And anyone who wants to come off mute to make their own announcements, feel free to do so at any time. Mariam, hello, I'm Mariam. I heard about the webinar from the YWCA Women in Tech program. I'd like to know how to have an influential elevation pitch and get prepared for an interview. Abla from Morocco, cool, Morocco. Looking forward to learning a lot of things. Welcome, Abla. Anyone else want to introduce themselves or make an announcement? Gonna give it 30 more seconds. And again, if I do continue on and it takes you a while to type out, I can read it out as we go as well. Let's see. Great. All right, I will move on if no one else wants to make any announcements. But yeah, feel free to make your announcements in the chat. And as I see them, I will read them out as long as they're not interrupting the flow of the session. Feel free to write any questions in the chat box again, and I will answer them as they come up. Oops, there we go. So quickly about myself, my background, my name is Chin. I come from a heavy background in entrepreneurship and startups. I spent the last 5 years working in a local incubator accelerator here in Vancouver, where we support social ventures. So these are companies that are not only for profit, but they're also working to make the world a better place through their business. So when I say make the world a better place, these are companies that are, for example, East End Roasters. They're a chocolate company. They make chocolate. They also run a coffee shop, but they also employ women from the downtown east side. So these are women who are recovering drug addicts, women who have mental challenges, and they use their chocolate making facility to create an opportunity for these women to get back on their feet and get back some working experience as well. So these type of companies are companies that I'm passionate working with. I've actually left Spring And currently, right now, I'm working on my own company called Housekeeping. Housekeeping focuses on providing soft skill development and training for entrepreneurs and professionals. So through my last 5 years and a bit of my background prior to Spring, I come from a background in sales as well. I like to be able to try to share some of my tips and tricks around persuasion and influence today, because I think this is a common topic that you see a lot in sales, in marketing, but this is a general topic, an essential skill that anyone can utilize, not only when you're doing sales and marketing as well. So some of it might come from that perspective, but I want you to customize the feedback based on your own situation. So yeah, that's a bit about myself. So let's get right to it. I see a few intros. Emily, hi Marin, great to see you here. Monique, curious what I can take away from this webinar. Great. So what I'm going to try to go through today is I'm going to cover copywriting. And for those of you who are not familiar with copywriting, so there's copyright, R-I-T-H-T, and there's copyright as in writing. Copywriting is basically the art of persuasion in language. And it comes from the marketing world. Basically, any text, so text on the website, if you're using a sales script, any text that you write up to prepare a speech, those all fall under the category of copy. So sometimes you might hear me use the word copy. That's just basically a reference to any sort of text, whatever you're writing. So I'm going to go through some of the basic frameworks around copywriting best practices. And here, when I talk about best practices, I'm not going to focus too much on techniques, because as you can see, techniques will evolve and change over time. So for example, it used to be the case that you would write an email and have the subject line all caps, and that would have high open rates. But over time, these techniques get saturated and people start to get desensitized to these kind of techniques, and you get lower conversion rate nowadays. So now you actually see that emails with subject lines that have all lower caps actually seem more personal and less promotional and actually have high open rates. I'm not going to cover those kind of techniques. I'm going to cover more around human psychology kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about relatability, getting people on your side using pain versus pleasure, reducing risk, gradualization. We will do some case studies. So we are actually going to look at some websites, just kind of analyze the copy as well. And then if we have some extra time, then I'm going to try to cover some basics around psychology, decision-making, and we can even go into the topic of negotiation if we have a lot of time. I'm going to quickly read out another intro. I see Gwendolyn Joyce Ang accidentally sent me a private message instead of a public message to everyone. Currently, university freshman interested, hoping to get into freelancing as a conversion copywriter. On the side, I love watching and joining start competitions as well. Yep, that is definitely going to be a good topic for you then today. Isabel, hoping to learn how to be more persuasive when I'm presenting ideas of changing management. Definitely. Gwen, university freshman, interested, hoping to get into freelancing. Oh, that's the same thing. All right. I see Stephanie from North Van Arts looking at revamping our Canada Donate page, tips and tricks on language for our site. Also hiring, great. So if anyone is looking for a job, I know a lot of people have been laid off. North Van Arts is hiring, and she has posted a link to their career web page over there as well. Alosa, name is Chris from local Vancouver area, would like to get more tips around persuasion. Great, I think I've covered all of that. Welcome everyone. So let's get into it. So copywriting, I talked a bit about what copywriting is. It's the text, it's basically salesmanship in print. It's basically whatever wording you use to persuade people. So I say how to persuade and influence people with words. That's basically the act of copywriting. If you think about sales, sales is mostly associated with the verbal act of convincing people, and copywriting is the written persuasion, right? And at the end of the day, it's not just about like hype or like false scarcity or clever lines. There are a lot of good frameworks that you can apply, and some of them are very basic, but you don't notice them unless they're pointed out to you. So let's get right into it. So where can you find copy? You can find copy basically everywhere. It can be in your email. It can be in what people say in videos. It can be on ads. It can be your website text. It could be what you say to investors when you're pitching to them, radio, sales script, basically any kind of text. So the first thing that a lot of people don't do well is when they write copy, they don't actually start by calling out their customer. And I think that is the number one universal truth that people need to start with. And why do we do it is because a lot of people, when it comes to copywriting, they are very worried about ostracizing people. They feel like if I say that this product is only, I mean, I don't have to say only, but if I'm saying like calling all entrepreneurs, then I might be worried that if someone lands on my website and is not an entrepreneur, then they will feel like this product is not for them, right? So the idea here is a lot of people feel that they are isolating people or pushing away some customers that they could possibly capture if they actually call out the customer too directly. But what is interesting is you actually need to call out the customer, because what you will find is customers, even if they're not that type of persona, when you call out when you call them out, if it is something that they want to aspire towards, they will resonate more strongly with it. And you can see even small changes in wording. You want to make sure that you're using language that they relate to can actually make a big difference in conversion as well. So I remember Matt Astefan, for those of you who don't know him, he runs the Internet Marketing Mastermind Group in Vancouver. And he noticed that one of his courses that he was selling was a social media training course. And he was saying social media training courses for freelancers. And he changed the word freelancers to digital nomad, and he saw a big difference in conversion. So even simple things like wording in terms of freelancer versus digital nomad, you want to know what your customers like to describe themselves as. So normally you want to do customer discovery, try to really understand how they talk about their problems, what language really resonates with them, and how they like to talk about the services that they want to use. So there is this link to this quick Apple video. I'm going to try and pull it up. It's a short, quick video, but it really gives you, oh no, copyright. That happens. And let me share it as well.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Great short video, but I wanted to show all of you that, because if you notice with that video, this was the Super Bowl ad that Apple played, I think in, when was it? 2002, I think. But what was interesting is that the ad, if you notice, it doesn't actually talk about their product at all. And it was one of their most effective ad campaigns. Of course, you have to remember that the ad campaign was not just this single video. There was a whole bunch of other stuff that went around it as well. But the idea was that Apple was positioning themselves to cater towards the creatives, people who think differently, people who are out of the norm, people who see themselves as, being those quote unquote geniuses, right? And the idea is that people felt like they wanted to aspire towards becoming that type of persona. So it's very strong and powerful to really call out your customer. If any of you are familiar with this great video by Simon Sinek, so he talks about start with the why. And when you talk about starting with the why, it's really about the mission. So when you are identifying who that mission is for, then people will tend to gravitate towards that. So start by calling out your customer, a very simple concept, but not a lot of companies do it. Second concept when it comes to copy, and if you stay to the end, you'll actually see that I'll give away a copywriting checklist. So you can actually evaluate your scripts, your website based against the checklist. So the second tip I want to give is you want to try to make your customers or the reader or whoever you're trying to persuade feel special in some way. So one good way of doing that is, there are actually three different ways. So one of the ways is to create a movement to make them feel like they're a part of something that's bigger than themselves. So the idea is, I briefly mentioned that mission piece, right? What is the cause that you're about? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to change in the world? How is your technology trying to make the world a better place? How are you trying to benefit your customers? If people feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves, they will want to be a part of that. They don't feel like it's just like, oh, me buying a product, but instead it's like, oh, I'm doing something, I have more purpose and intent around my life, my legacy, right? Polarizing is another strong way of getting people to feel a bit special. So Donald Trump does this pretty well, although maybe arguably he's not the best example. So you can see he will take a strong stance on gun control or a strong stance on environment. But the idea is when you polarize, usually what happens is you're creating an alternative option. And if people don't agree with that other option, you are the best option, the next best option, right? So the idea is when you polarize, you will get people who don't agree with you, but on the other side, you will attract people who agree with your statement, your stance. So you tend to see this a lot in a lot of campaigns. But when you polarize, you want to be careful about how you call out the enemy. When I say identify a common enemy here, you don't want to do competitor bashing. So the idea around competitor bashing is when you're saying like Apple versus Microsoft, like, oh, that company, they suck, or they're not really good, why, blah, 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 blah. Competitor bashing is not a good idea because it exposes you to, of course, them criticizing you in return. So the idea is when you identify a common enemy, a good way of doing it is actually by actually talking about sort of more general. So for example, I might say that what I'm doing with Classy Novel is focus on soft skill and development because I feel that the traditional education system, so I'm identifying the common enemy, which is the traditional education system, i.e. universities. Again, I'm not naming a university, I'm just saying universities. They focus a lot on hard skills rather than focusing on these type of soft, more emotional skills or skills that are not typically seen as tactical or trades related skills. Make sense? So create a movement, polarizing and identifying common enemy. Let me see if I have some examples. If not, let me quickly pull it up. So I want to quickly show you this Facebook group. So this is one of the companies we worked with when I was at Spring. And the company is actually Nada. So Nada Grocery. It's a grocery store. They are based on Broadway and Fraser in Vancouver. And they are basically a zero waste packaging grocery store. So when they started, Brienne, who was the co-founder, she was a marine biologist and she had basically no business background experience. And she wanted to test the idea and she wanted to start by actually building a customer base. So we said, hey, why don't you try starting a community? So we suggested that she start the Zero Waste Vancouver group. And now you can see it's 10,000 people in the group. So it really started with her own network. And now it's become a really strong organic group where people are focused around the mission. And you can notice it's not branded as Nada Grocery's Facebook page or Nada Grocery group. It is Zero Waste Vancouver. And you can see people are posting all the time. People are commenting, responding, sharing resources, things like that. So that's like a good community. And when you start by creating a community or movement, that's actually a really great place for you to build thought leadership. You set yourself up as the expert in the community. It's also a great way for you to market to the community. Of course, the idea is community should be focused on the cause. It's not just about the company. So you shouldn't be marketing yourself all the time. You should also be sharing other resources that are relevant for the community as well. So that's community piece. Ooh. I hear a baby in the background. Stephanie, I'm just gonna put you on mute. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat box. There we go. Ooh. So the next mistake that a lot of companies do, or a lot of copywriters do, is they focus on the positives, on the pleasure. It's quite obvious why people want to focus on the pleasure. They feel like the negative things tend to bring people down. And if you're focusing on the positives, you're more likely to get people to feel good and therefore buy or want to use your product or service or be convinced on your point of view. But what you will notice is pain is actually more relatable when it comes to understanding what the problem is or getting people to take action. So if you kind of doubt this, when you go out and if you notice on a day-to-day basis, when you hang out with your friends, how often do people talk about their goals in life? How often do people talk about what they want to do with their money or what they want to do on their free time? People more often tend to complain about the problems that they have. So this is because problems are usually more immediate and they are more front and center for a lot of people. It is great to have the pleasure piece, but the challenging thing about pleasure is different people will kind of have different views of the benefit of your product or service. So I'll give you an example. So for example, if you say that we are running a sales training program and we'll bring you more revenue. So revenue could mean a lot of things to different people. To me, it might mean that I have the security in my business and my business is not going to fail. To someone else, it might mean that they have the freedom in the business, and freedom and securities are two very different values. So if you notice, when you're trying to write marketing copy, the words that you use, even though you're trying to address the same benefit, the values are different. So it's really hard to address people based on the positive sometimes. But on the other hand, if you focus on the problems, if you say, hey, are you struggling with revenue, especially right now during the COVID situation, then like a lot of people will immediately say, oh, you know what? I have that problem. I resonate with that. Therefore, I'm going to take action, right? So that's why you want to think about strategically using pain. I'm not saying just focus on the pain all the time. But when you just think about balancing pain versus pleasure, don't avoid pain language. Talking about the problem is actually very powerful when it comes to persuasion. Fourth tip, make it impossible to say no. So the idea here is when people are considering taking action, using your product or service, or maybe even adopting your idea, in the back of their mind, they're starting to ask a lot of questions. And what you want to try to do is you want to try to address objections before they even come up. So you want to reduce risk or maybe even reverse risk if at all possible. So what you're trying to do over here is, let's say you can see where a lot of companies nowadays, they offer like, returns. So they say, oh, 30-day no risk return. But if that's reducing risk, or you can say free shipping. If you want to return, we ship it. You can ship it back to us, postage paid, things like that. So that's reducing risk. Reversing risk is where you're actually taking on the risk yourself, such that it makes the other party a lot more comfortable with actually taking action. So I'll give you one example again. So when we ran one program at Spring, the program that we launched was called the 2X program. So the idea was people would join the program and we would actually tell these entrepreneurs and we would say, hey, you know what? We will try to double your revenue in 3 months, or you don't pay anything for this program. So the idea is they pay for the program, but not only is it, hey, return guarantee, but it's, we will actually double your revenue, or we will give you your money. And if we want to even take it a step further, so we didn't do this, but I know that Matt does this with his courses. He actually says, not only that, we will actually work with you to actually meet those goals, and we will actually do some of the action for you as well. So the idea here is they are taking on the risk themselves. They're really showing confidence in your product or service. Of course, it's not always possible. It depends on your product or service. And you should obviously be confident in the value of your product or service before you try to do this. So that's the reverse risk piece, overcoming objections before they arise. So one thing that I like to do is every time I write copy, I try to think about what are some questions that people will ask, or some objections that people might come up with, like, oh, it's too expensive, or you know what, I have to speak to my spouse about this, or you know, I don't have time for this. So when you write all these objections down and you actually address them before they come up in your copy, then you're more likely to convert, because people are actually going through the copy and then they're like, oh, you know what, I know that. Or, oh, you know what, I don't have money, but I can do a payment plan, things like that. So you're actually trying to address them before they come up. And this is probably the most powerful tip. So I'm just going to try to admit Karina. Gradualization. So one big mistake that a lot of people do with copywriting is they try to persuade people in a single transaction or interaction. And this happens in many different ways. So you might be trying to convince people to buy your product or service through your website. It might be through an email. It might be through a sales call. You might be trying to convince an investor to invest in your company within a single pitch event. So all of this are big mistakes. So you have to recognize that. And when I use the word sales here, I'm not only talking about sales of products or services, but also persuasion of whatever thing you're trying to do. It's not a one-time interaction. It's not a one-time event. there are usually, in sales, there's this term called escalation. So there are usually micro steps to get people to the next stage. So the idea is you need to get people through a series of realizations. And to give you an illustration of that, they need to slowly believe different things in order to take the next step. So I think I have an example. So yeah. So for example, if you're selling a course, and let's say the course is a social media training program, it might start with, hey, I need to first believe that what I'm doing right now is not working. Once I believe that's not working, I need to believe that there's actually a better way of getting leads, making sales. And then after that, I need to believe that I can actually make 6 to 7 figures a year without prospecting, and this is how to build a brand. Then I need to believe that of all the different methods, social media is the best option for me. And then now that I know social media is the best option, I need to next believe that this product that I'm looking at, this training course, will actually get me results faster and better than any other solution out there. And then, of course, the last one is I need to believe that I need to get it now to actually take action right now. So that's like an example flow. But usually what you will see is the rough framework is fairly the same. It usually starts with they need to believe that, whatever they're doing right now is not working, like there's a problem. And it usually ends with they need to believe that they need the product now. So the idea is you want to try to write your copy, and sometimes copy is not just in one single place, right? It might be, for example, if you have a website, you might not try to get someone to buy a product so right off the bat, or you might not try to get someone to donate right away, but it might be like, view this and then take action to the next step. So for example, you might say, hey, you know what? Check this out. And then if you're not too sure, maybe read this blog post. So it really depends. So what you might find is that the challenge is not everyone will go through the entire process from start to finish through the interaction with you or your company or your website. Because sometimes when people get in contact with you or you meet them, they're already at, let's say, step 4 or step 5. So in that case, you need to adjust depending on where they are at. But let's say, for example, if it's a website and you're assuming that people who are landing on your website are people who are fresh leads, who are uneducated customers, then the idea is maybe you might say, hey, you know what? Check out this case study. And then from the case study, they actually see, oh, you know what? I realized that this company actually works. This methodology actually works. Then I want to learn more. Then maybe it's book a strategy call. And then from book a strategy call, it's actually, I'm really interested now, what's the pricing option, right? So the idea is to gradually move them through the different phases of realization. So maybe I'll do a quick exercise here just to give you all some fun things to do. So as you're thinking, and here I use the word customer, but in your context, in your situation, whatever you're trying to persuade, whether it be for yourself or maybe it's for your company, or maybe you're trying to, let's say, convince an investor, whatever it is, whoever the other party is, what are the series of realizations that they need to go through in order to, believe or decide that they want to take your point of view or use your product or service. And maybe we'll give everyone about 5 minutes to just brainstorm some of this. Feel free to write down a list. You don't have to share it if you don't want to. And I'm just going to go on mute. But if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat box as well. right, I think we are going to move on. So some really great examples coming out of the chat. Believe that you are the best choice versus competition, that the product provides value in alignment with your core values, that you are genuinely trying to help them, not just sell. They need to trust you before they go with you. Environmental impact from your product company, important of fit. So all of those are definitely great examples. Remember, different situation, different scenario, you have to customize based on that. So for example, if you're trying to persuade someone not to jump off the building, obviously you don't need to convince them about you versus competition. Like the kind of context is a little bit different there, but the idea is, what are they trying to go through in terms of realization? Maybe you need to get them to realize that their life is actually worth living, that there are actually people who care about them, things like that. So the idea is, what do you need to get them to realize in order to next step, right? Great. So let's take a quick look at copy in action, and let me see if I can actually pull up, or even if the copy has changed because I've left Spring. But basically, when I was writing the copy for their website, they were it was for a fundraising program. So they had a program where it was for entrepreneurs who are looking to raise money from investors. And the idea is, we provided a program, a training program, that actually helped them with understanding the process behind fundraising and how to connect with impact investors. So this was the gradualization thing that I started with. So I started with companies need to realize that they need to scale. And then the second thing that you need to realize is, they need to realize that fundraising will actually help them scale. They need to realize then that they actually don't know anything about fundraising. They need to then realize that Spring is an expert at fundraising. Then they need to realize that they need to start the process early in order to succeed. And finally, they need to realize that this course will save them time and money on raising their round. So sounds fairly logical, great. So what I did is I kind of broke down the funnel in terms of top, middle, and bottom of funnel. And if you're not familiar with the concept of funnel, it's basically a marketing or sales concept where you have this V-shaped funnel where you have a lot of people coming in the top and you convert a few people out the bottom. And I don't want to get into too much detail on funnel and how to optimize funnel, but basically at the very top, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to capture people who are at the start of the scale, that they're starting to realize that they need to scale their company, they need fundraising, they don't know anything about fundraising. So the ads, then we were running workshops, meetups, webinars, and we were doing email drip campaigns. And what we're trying to do with all the ads, all the workshops and the emails is, we want to make them realize that if they're not growing their company, they're basically dying, because all their competitors are growing. If you're a startup, you have to be growing because you're not a big company that already has a market. You are starting to capture a market, right? So in that case, that was what we were trying to do with all of this kind of ads, events, and copy. So what I was then trying to do is, the next conversion or call to action was, I'm trying to get them to come to a landing page and register for the event so we can capture their emails, or we're trying to capture their click-through rates to see if the ads are actually converting, if we're using the right language. Then the next step is, now that they've actually signed up for these webinars or workshops, or now that they've actually read some of these blogs, we were actually doing the webinars, we are actually running the workshops, or we are giving downloadable content, or actually jumping on a discovery call with them. And the idea is, what we're doing in terms of what content goes into the webinar, the workshops, the discovery calls, is we're kind of talking to them about the differences, pros and cons around fundraising versus bootstrapping, whether it is actually the right option for them. Some companies, some entrepreneurs, they think that they want to raise money from investors, but they don't really know whether it's actually the right option, because it's not for every company. Some investors will push you to very aggressively grow your company, and it might not be for you, right? Excuse me. So the idea is, I'm trying to help them understand, if fundraising is actually right for them, that they actually don't know as much as they think they know about fundraising. And it's also our opportunity to build some credibility around us as fundraising experts as well. So that's kind of the middle funnel. And then at the bottom of funnel, we're directing them towards the cost page. We're doing an interview with them. We're doing a demo. And the idea is, we're helping them get a bit more familiar around the fundraising process. So what actually goes into fundraising? How does our program work? How do we actually guide you through towards different elements? Like, how do you build a pitch deck? How do you build your due diligence folder with your investor? How do you negotiate with investors? Things like that. So we're getting a bit more granular here. And then we're trying to give them a sense of urgency. So for example, we'll talk about things like, if you want to raise capital, a lot of people think that they can say, hey, I want to raise money right now, go out a month later and actually get investors to invest in your company. It doesn't work that way, right? We actually try and get them to realize that fundraising typically takes about 6 months because they need to get all the right documents in place, the legal, the financial. They need to build a relationship with the investors before they convince them. And then from there, they are actually going to start to negotiate with investors as well. So the idea here is we're starting to drive that urgency, get people to realize that, hey, you know what? If you want to start raising next year, you got to start now. And then we are also talking about things like, hey, we only have capacity to work with a certain amount of companies because we want to do a really good job working with the companies, really support you. And it's not just a course, it's actually more of a course plus consultation as well. So we are working very closely with them, and this helps them realize kind of all the points that I kind of talked about over here, right? So now they see we're an expert. Now they see they need to start the process early to succeed. Now they see that this course will actually save them a lot of time and money because they're going to avoid all these rookie mistakes. They're not going to waste time. They're not going to say the wrong things to investors. So I hope you guys kind of get a sense of how I'm using gradualization over here and how I'm kind of deciding where to fit, what to say where. And then I want to go through some other tips, but maybe I'll quickly pause here. Any questions? I'm just going to get some water while you guys type. Thank you all for waiting. I'm sorry, I was in another webinar call this morning and it ran for quite a while and I didn't get enough water. So I'm parched right now. There you go. So doesn't look like there's any big questions. So we'll move on. A few other key tips, and all of this will be in the copywriting checklist that I mentioned as well. So identify the character. So that's where I talked about calling up the customer, defining what they want, really talking about the right language here. Is what I find very interesting is in sales or in persuasion, they have this term where they say, sell them what they want, give them what they need. And a great example is if you look at healthcare, your doctors will tell you, oh, you know what, you just had a heart attack, you need to exercise more, you need to eat better. But a lot of people don't actually take that advice, and a lot of people don't actually do it because that's not what they want. They want to feel good. They want to, if they're down, emotional, then they want to eat the food that they like, or if they're lazy, they don't actually go out and exercise. So the idea is you want to sell them what they want and then give them what they need. And it applies to basically everything as well. So let's say if you're in the healthcare space, then you might say, instead of focusing on the health benefits, you might talk a bit about like, hey, you know what, you want to spend more time with your loved ones, then you need to actually exercise, eat, because that's what they want, right? They actually want to hang around the people that they really cherish a bit longer. Or it might be, oh, you know what, you want to fit into that wedding dress of yours, then you need to do some of these things. So the idea is sell them what they want, give them what they need. So you want to define what they want. People tend to buy, if you notice, solutions to internal problems as well. So this is great, especially if you're in a B2B situation. So if you think that you're selling business to business, what you often don't realize is that the people who make decisions are still people, not organizations. Like at the end of the day, yes, it has to benefit the organization, but you also have to speak to the individual as well. What are their own problems? What are their internal problems as well? So the idea here is you want to know, maybe someone might be thinking like, oh, you know what, if I fix this problem, I can get a promotion. Or if we can actually deal with this issue, I can save a lot of time for myself. So what are some of those internal problems, not just the external problems as well? And the biggest and probably most important piece is a lot of people, when it comes to copywriting, they tend to highlight themselves or the company as quote unquote the hero. So you have to remember that your customer is the hero. You are the guide. So if you're familiar with the hero's journey, when you talk about storytelling, the hero's journey, basically the framework there is the hero will go through a cycle of actually going through trials and tribulations, coming out the other end as someone who is more empowered to actually take the next step, or actually have a different perspective of the world. And the idea here is you are not the hero. So don't focus on writing copy that's highlighting like how amazing your company is or how amazing your product service is. It's more about whoever the other person is. They are the hero. You are the guide. You are helping them get to that, big, amazing place. And the next thing is copy as well. You want to give them a plan. You want to make it logical. Make sure that people can actually, you want to walk people through like what happens. So sometimes a lot of companies, they say, okay, book a strategy call. And then they don't give enough detail around like what exactly is a strategy call, and people don't take action. But if you actually say, hey, this is what happens in a strategy call, this is how we will help you, and then this is what happens next, then that gives a very clear step-by-step action plan, so people can logically say, oh, you know what, I understand how this works, I'm going to go for it. Common mistakes, and then we can go into some case studies. Vague headline, so a lot of companies might not really describe what exactly they do. Lack strong call to action. So I'm going to try and see if I can pull up some emails as well. But basically, you're not actually getting your customers to take action or getting whoever you're trying to convince to take that next step. You're using a lot of, like I mentioned, you're focusing on yourself or your company. So you're talking a lot about yourself instead of using you language, focusing on the customer. Or you're trying to focus on too many solutions, too many value propositions. So smell tests, and again, these are all going to be in a checklist. When you look at copy, when people see or hear whatever you're saying, they really need to know who do you serve, what do you do, how can I get in touch with you. So these are the 3 basic things. So let's quickly look at some case studies, and then we can look at the checklist. So this one over here, and feel free to type in the chat box. So this is one website. And actually, a good friend of mine was the one who was designing the website for them. He probably should have blanked out their website. But you can take a look. I want to hear your feedback. What do you think about this? Like, what could be improved? What are some areas where you can adjust and focus more on the copy, on what's being said, rather than the design of the website? So feel free to type in chat anything that catches your eye, anything that you're like, hey, you know what? They should have said it this way, or some of the things that we just covered. I'll give you one example quickly. So I talked about having too many call to actions. So you can see schedule from home estimate, see how, there's a call list, there's the phone number at the top. So too many call to actions. There's too many things for the customer to do. There's a lot of buttons as well, right? Recent projects. So they should have mentioned what they do, definitely. So basement finish in 18 days. Like finish, what does basement finishing mean? Does it mean building, renovating the basement? Is it installing equipment, like setting up a home care system? Like what is it? Welcome, is it necessary? Maybe not. See how are highlighted, but it doesn't have to be done twice. I agree. Great. Any other comments? What is your value proposition? Yeah, like what's special about this? Like, yes, this is what you're providing, but what's the value behind it? What's the value proposition? They could have mentioned they got to resume family activities only 18 days after. Yeah, that could be great. Like more of the value side of things. Addressing advantage to client by telling a story versus fact. Sure. So maybe you can see how a friend of mine actually redesigned their website. Again, not perfect, but some improvements. So you can see that's the new website. Finish basements in 18 days. Get your dream basement starting from $200 a month with 0 interest financing. So you can see they're talking about using more you language versus like, it's our company, we finish your basement. So right, we're talking about we can help you finish even the small work, they're getting your dream basement, right? And then pricing, so objections. So normally, like I mentioned, a lot of people will be asking questions when they're reading your copy. They're wondering like, how much does it cost? Like, are there any return guarantees? Or what if it's not turning out the way I like it to be? What if I can't pay for it? So 200 a month, 0 interest financing, free in-home estimate. Got a written estimate, we will beat it. So price matching, 2-year warranty, right? So all of these kind of things might seem very basic, and it might seem like it's still a bit salesy, but it is actually effective. And you can actually see from the results, they actually had a 62% increase in leads. And just because it's actually psychologically addressing some of these things that go through people's minds more easily. So you can see as well, building some credibility here, featured on House, Home Stars, you know, certifications that they have. Oops. 3-in-1 basement finishing. Our basements include model proofing, waterproofing, random gas protection. So again, going into more detail about what they're providing. And then only one call to action here is schedule a free home estimate, right? So trying to really focus the attention there. This is another interesting example here. So what are your thoughts? How can you improve this website? Again, don't focus on the design, focus on the copy, what's being said. It can use space below. Space below, I'm not too sure about the space below thing. Is that more of a design comment? Like the credibility piece. So 2,000 brands created. Focuses on the company, not the client. Yes, definitely. Get your custom logo made your way. So more you language. Display some works. So definitely, again, credibility there. Actually having some examples. What pain do they ease, for sure. So maybe I'll just quickly show you what the improvement looked like. And again, don't focus too much on the design aspect of it. I do feel that the improved website, though it visually looks a little bit better, it is still a bit salesy. But you can see, they say, okay, we make custom design logos that make your brand memorable. So that's the value proposition, making your brand memorable, right? So that's the pain that they ease that Samin just mentioned. And then, you know, actually listing the price starting at $49, you can see time sensitive, like a time limited offer as well. So 50% off till 31st of May, right? So driving some urgency there, giving money back guarantee, unlimited revisions. So that's another piece. Like, hey, if you don't like your logo, you still want to work with us, but you want us to improve it, we can keep improving it as long as you want to. Full copyright transfer, no hidden fee. So again, addressing all those objections that are coming up. And then again, directing in the call to action. So the first website, basically no call to action above the full, right? So over here, there's the order now button. You can actually take action over there as well. And then, you know, more specifics in the bottom. If you can't read that, it actually says 5 original and unique designs. 3 expert designers will be assigned to your case. Delivery within 48 hours. So again, more of these additional things as well. And of course, it's a design website. The new one just looks a lot better as a design website. So I'm going to kind of fly through the rest of the examples, but the goal here is, I know that these examples are more on the company and product and website type of thing, but a lot of these concepts still apply because psychologically all of these things when it comes to persuasion and influence, I'm using it in a sales example because it's very easy to understand because you're trying to persuade someone to take action to buy something. But, you know, like I mentioned, if you're doing something like trying to convince someone to go to a party with you, or trying to convince someone to, you know, stay at home instead of, you know, going out to work, then those are all kind of things that you can apply to as well. So some other examples here quickly, you can see on the left, injury lawyer, probably some quick high level things, so many call to actions, right? You have, I had a minor motor vehicle accident, I had slip and fall. So again, here it's kind of focusing the attention, you know, addressing the objections that come up, free case evaluation, no fee unless we win. So like, you know, all these kind of things that people might be worried about. Credibility as seen on, so some of the news outlets, some videos, some testimonials. So some very, very basic things, but just actually really just bringing it out so I'm focusing the attention there. And this is another one I think very similar. So I'm not going to go through that. I want to quickly show actually another presentation that I do but I like to show this because it's actually one email or a few emails that I've received. Email. I'm going to jump ahead to the example. Oops. Give me a second. So this is actually one email that I receive, and you probably receive a lot of this type of junk mail all the time as well. So you can see over here in this email, hi, I'd like to do custom corporate socks for your company. They would make a great fit for your tier 1 clients. So some quick highlight and observations over here. And you guys can probably read faster than I can say, but it's not personalized. So he's not addressing me. It's just hi. Nice use of spacing. I mean, it's easy to read, but he's jumping. He's trying to get me to buy in the first interaction, right? Remember I mentioned you want to slowly escalate the conversation. There are too many call to actions. Check out our brand book here. Look at the pricing. Check out our work here. Look at my website, right? Too many different call to actions. I don't really understand why this is for me. What's the benefit? Please let me know your thoughts. I think it'd be hit. So again, very weak in terms of convincing me. Another example over here. So you can see slightly better because the subject line is a bit more personalized. It says discount or perks for entrepreneurs of Spring, Vancouver. So obviously I opened it up because I was like, might be interesting for our companies. But again, you could probably quickly customize and actually put in a name there by just looking online, looking at a company website, looking at our team page to figure out who is working at Spring. So hello, I'm Daniel, CEO of Edit, an online graphic design editor. So okay, great, very concise intro. I think we can reach an agreement Spring Vancouver to offer Edit to your clients. What we offer is a discount of more than 100. So he's focusing on a lot of benefits. He's talking he's focusing on a lot of features. He's talking about things like 1 gigabyte of space, access to thousands of designs, resized designs, blah, 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 blah. But the idea is like what's the benefit of all of these features? Like how will it actually help some of these companies, right? What makes him different from the competitors? Because we get a lot of this type of offers all the time. So, and at the end you can see as well, no call to action. If you need more info or have any questions, we will discuss it without a problem. Like what do you want me to do? So I'll show you one example of a copy that I wrote. So like I mentioned, we were doing a fundraising program. And what I was doing for prospecting is I was looking for companies on this platform called Gus. And Gus is like AngelList. It's basically a website where you can list your company and actually say that, hey, I'm looking for investors. And you put up a whole bio of your company there, you put your pitch deck, and then if an investor comes across your company and thinks it's interesting, they can reach out to you. So I actually reach out to companies on Gus and I say, hey, Janet, great to meet you. I hope you're doing well. I came across Team Job Find on Gus, and I believe we have aligned values to use businesses for good. So obviously I was targeting companies that are social ventures as well. I would love to hear more about your impact-driven venture. We help mission-driven companies around the world that are raising capital. So quickly, just briefly introducing ourselves. And I'm focusing on, we help companies that are raising capital within this amount. So I'm giving a specific range, and that helps them identify if they are the right client as well. Like maybe they're like, oh, you know what? I'm not raising that much, or I'm raising less, or I'm raising more, then maybe it's not a fit. Especially if they're looking to get it from impact investors, so the value proposition there. And then what I'm saying is, was wondering, are you currently raising a round of funding or planning to in the next 6 months? So if you notice with my call to action, I actually bolded the call to action. I'm actually asking them, are you raising money now or in the next 6 months? And the call to action, if you notice with it as well, I'm not trying to get a sale in this first interaction. I'm just trying to get them to say yes or no. And then from the yes or no, I can follow up and say, hey, you know what? Maybe let's jump on a call and let me see if I can help you, right? But the idea is I want to first know if they are actually interested in taking the next step. And then I just briefly kind of, give more specifics. We specialize in providing training, coaching, and mentorship for fundraising. Let me know if you're raising and we can dig deeper and see if we can collaborate. So that was my copy, slightly better. Again, probably not perfect. You can probably find some flaw in it as well. But results speak a ton. So I actually sent this email out. And as you can see over here, I sent 53 emails. And 47 of the 53 emails were open. And actually 46 of the 47 of them actually responded, right? So I have like a 98% response rate, which is pretty much unheard of when it comes to sales emails or email marketing. So I'm not going to go too much into detail for this because I actually have another workshop that I'm talking about this topic. But yeah, I hope that kind of gives you a sense of like what I mean by different examples, different ways of positioning copy using some of the practices that we just talked about. Some other quick tips. So obviously the more hurdles you get someone to jump through, the lower the conversion. So you can see very simple things like, you know, the more fields someone has to fill out, the less likely they are to convert. So the less things that people need to do, the higher the conversion rate. So what a lot of companies are moving towards doing nowadays is they're doing what they call multi-step landing pages. So instead of one landing page and they're trying to convert people in a single page, they might have a page, it just has a sign up button, people click on the sign up button, then they see the form. And then maybe even in the form, instead of having like 20 questions in the form, maybe it might be 5 questions first, just to kind of qualify them. And then if they're a fit, then they get to see more questions after. If not, then maybe it's a different solution for them. So the idea is it helps people feel like this is a better fit for them. A great example is sometimes you see some companies say like, request a quote. And then one of the things that you will do is you would first select like, what location are you from? Like, are you from Canada, from US, from somewhere else? And just by making that selection, it helps them feel like, oh, you know what, this solution is more tailored to me. So that's kind of the idea behind multi-step landing pages. So maybe we can skip over the exercise, but that's a copy checklist. And I can send this to you guys as well. So I mentioned on the right side, call out your customer, make them feel special. What are their pains? Sorry, on the left side. On the right side is just some tips. So are you using their language, right? Is it actually addressing the so what test? So why should I care? Number 2, make a big promise, expand on desire. Number 3, is it a specific solution? Is what you offer clear? Back it up. What's the social proof? Do you have case studies, things like that, testimonials? Uncovering objections. Are you answering all their questions, right? Making it impossible to say no. Are you giving them something to say yes to? Is there some element of scarcity? You test, is the copy about you or about them? And lastly, what is it? Gradualization, yep. So yeah, if you follow this, you should be able to create pretty good copy. And again, customize it based on your solution. You might not need to have every single step. But I'll give you another example just so you can get a sense of a non-sales or marketing related context of how you can use copy. So let's say you're trying to convince your friend to go hiking with you, right? So you can see a lot of people might just say, hey, let's go hiking next weekend. And they end there, or they create a Facebook page and they say, hey, hiking at Garibaldi Lake or whatever place. And they find that they really struggle to get people to sign up. So if you take an example of this copy and kind of break it down, so you can see over here, let's go on an adventure. You've been sitting in the office all week. Let's go out and breathe some fresh air, get some green sights. You can see what I'm doing over here is there's that big promise. It's an adventure. It's not just hiking, right? And then I'm painting the picture. I'm painting desire. I'm helping people understand with all the different senses, like fresh air, they breathe in, sights, sounds, smells, things like that. And then you can, again, continue to paint the picture, actually show them images of where you want to go, right? Really compel them to actually take action because they're like, oh, wow, that place looks amazing. I want to go there with you. Social proofing, right? You can say, hey, you know what? John is coming, Amy's coming, or you can even say like, oh, other people are coming from around the world just to visit this place, whatever it is. So you're actually building in some social proof. Addressing objections. You can say, oh, you know what? I'll drive. Don't worry about the logistics. Like I've planned, I've packed everything. Or you can even drive some urgency there. You can say, hey, you know what? Summer is ending or whatever it is. You can say, hey, you know what? More urgency. Let me know by this Friday. I only have 2 seats left in my car. Or I need to create the meal plan or whatever it is. So you can see how this copy is a bit more convincing just because I've actually followed some of the elements that I talked about. Great, so quick takeaways and then we can wrap it up. Call out your customer, create a movement, use pain strategically, reduce, remove, reverse risk, gradualization. That's probably the biggest framework. If you take away anything from this presentation, like that's the most important thing, like gradualization. Use social proof, address objections before they arise. Any questions? So this is my email. Feel free to note down my email. If you want the slide, I actually ask people to email me to get the slides. I don't send it out in a post-session email. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Any questions? Maybe we'll stop here for a bit. And then I have a few other bonus content as well if we have some time. But I want to make sure I answer any questions. So feel free to type in your questions. Let's see how we have time. Still have time. Maybe I'll run through some things, and I know some people are still typing up questions. Feel free to take your time. So, some upcoming workshops, if anyone is interested in some of the other content that I have. April 29, this is more for entrepreneurs. Co-hosted with Storybrand in Richmond, we're going to be talking about how to find your ideal co-founder. So if you're looking for a team member, someone to start a company with, this is a great workshop for you. May 6th, we are doing a discussion on time management and productivity. So things around how to optimize your schedule, optimize your to-do list, how to figure out what to do next, things like that. May 13th, again with Storybrand in Richmond, talking more about startup basics. So if you're planning on starting a company, you want to kind of know what to avoid, what mistakes to not make, good for you. May 20, that's actually the one where I talked about going into emails. So this is more, it's a bit different from the copywriting stuff. It's a bit more on like how to get good conversion in emails, how to ask for things politely without getting rejected, things like that. May 27, storytelling. So all of this can be found on the Eventbrite page. And I'm actually running a challenge coming up as well. So if anyone is interested, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. And the best thing about this challenge is it's not only for tech companies. So if you have an idea, and it doesn't have to be tech, it can be any kind of idea. It could be a food idea, it could be a service idea, anything that you want to do. It's a great way for you to try out to find team members and also to actually validate your idea, test it out in the market. So it's a 30-day challenge, and it's kind of like a hackathon. We actually start by people pitching their ideas, forming teams. And then what I'm actually doing and why it's a 30-day thing, it's not just a weekend where you sit down and build something, but it's actually a kind of like a program plus a competition. So we're actually going to guide you through, do some mentoring, kind of help you understand some of the frameworks around how to test your idea, how to find customers, things like that. And at the end, we are actually awarding prizes as well. I'm putting together prizes right now, but the goal is to give up to $15,000 in prizes away. So the idea is first place will get $10,000. Probably, I'm going to try and see if we can get $10,000 in cash, pure cash, but it might be a mix of cash plus in kind. So that's first place, and then second place will get $4,000, third place will get $1,000. So there's going to be some prizes in it as well. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out on the website. I will send it out as well. It's going to be happening in June, so June 30th, June 20th, plenty of time from now. And for those of you who have been for some of my workshops, you know that I ask people to donate at the end. What I've actually set up is I'm actually going to be donating whatever you donate to me to Universal Outreach Foundation. So they provide quality educational opportunities to students of all ages. So if you like the content, these workshops are free. My only ask is if you find that you got some value out of this, feel free to send me an e-transfer of whatever you think it's worth, and I will give half of this away to Universal Outreach Foundation. I'm passionate about education, and I'm really focused on giving people the opportunity to learn, not only soft skills, but also hard skills as well. Yeah. Oh, someone's asking a question. So just curious, what widget Chrome extension did you use to create the final report tracker on the right of your Excel spreadsheet? So that tool that I was using is it's a Google spreadsheet plugin. It's called Yet Another Mail Merge, YAMM. And what it does is it allows you to send emails out through your inbox instead of using like a MailChimp or ActiveCampaign type of or HubSpot platform. So it's coming out from your own inbox. It's not coming out from another mail client. and it's actually doing a mail merge for you. So you're actually sending a mass amount of emails. You could send up to a few thousand emails if you want, and it will customize different portions of the email based on the content that you're writing. So you might say hello bracket first name, and you'll say hello John, hello Amy, depending on your spreadsheet, and it will actually track open rates, respond rates, things like that. Cool. So cool. I think that's basically it. Other questions before I jump into some other stuff? Oh, someone asked a question, but I missed it. Oh, sorry. Yes. Pablo Tijani, when you say we have to relate with their pain, does it mean we have to show compassion or mostly show them that we can find solutions to their problem? I would say both, especially in this current situation. Like, you're noticing that a lot of companies are actually improving their messaging. Maybe it's even unconscious. And I actually really like how it's sounding nowadays, because there's a lot more empathy in the way that people communicate. So the compassion piece definitely helps. So I'd say, yeah, a bit of both the compassion, but also you need to definitely show them that you're actually giving them a solution to the problem. Yeah. Thanks for noticing that, Annie. Can I think of a specific example for that? Yeah, I don't know a very specific example. Any other questions? Cool. So I know we are at 7:15. I booked the webinar up to 7:30, so feel free to jump off if you have to. For those of you who are staying around, I'm actually going to spend maybe about 15 minutes going through a few other things. So decision making, I'm going to be talking about some psychology around that as well. And then maybe if I even have some time, I might even touch on negotiating techniques as well. I'm going to fly through some of these slides, a lot of content. But again, if you want the slides, just send me an email, I can send it to you. So decision making. What I like to talk about over here on decision making is the traditional framework is people tend to think about decision making from a very logical perspective. They tend to focus a lot on like what are the pros and cons, very rational, but it doesn't take into account a lot of the other things, the emotion behind it, the loyalty, sense of obligation, ethics, social perceptions, things like that. So, oh, sorry, question. Gwendolyn Joyce, I want to practice my copywriting skills while learning how to measure results. Besides having free clients or maybe helping out a local startup, what other ways would you recommend? Good question. I actually like to practice copy in everything that I do. So like events that I'm organizing, I tend to analyze my copy as well. So even like personal events, social events, non-business related things, I try to kind of test even in the things that I say with people. So as an example, when I'm actually testing a new idea, or if I say like, hey, you know what, I want to run this new project, I want to start something new, I will actually ask people, hey, you know what, I have this idea, and then I will test the way I say it and see if people react better if I say it in one way versus another way. So I'd say just test in many different ways, and don't just do it within a business context as well. And how you measure, it really depends on how you collect data, right? You have to track it in order to really be able to see results. And when you try to measure as well, you want to try as much as possible, although it's not always possible, to do control testing. What was the term for it? I don't remember the specific term. Cohort testing, yeah. So the idea is, let's say, for example, if you're making a tweak on your, let's say, email subject line or the ad copy that you have. And what happens is you want to know if that tweak is really what affected the change, or if it might have been, let's say, a difference in maybe even timing. So for example, if you wait till next week to make the change, then that's not cohort testing, because there could have been other factors that affected conversion rate. So maybe let's say next week was spring break, more people were online, more people saw your ad, therefore they took action, right? So that could have also influenced conversion. So the idea is when you do testing, normally you want to try to A/B test within the same time frame. So you might actually launch the same campaign, have an A/B version, and actually test it at the same time, and really try to compare results based on how your messaging is converting. But I'd say if you're in the early days, like don't worry too much about A/B testing. A/B testing requires a lot of resource and a lot of time. A/B testing, to really get statistical significant results, you need to get at least 1,000 people through, let's say your page or your ad. So if you're really early along, the best way to test is to actually speak to people in person. That's my preference, because when you speak to people in person, you can actually hear the intonation, you can read their body language, you can actually get some context, dig more, you can ask them more questions. So it gives you a lot more information around how people are responding to your messaging. If you do, let's say, a call or video call, it's harder to read body language. If you do a survey, you can't even hear intonation, right? So every layer you go down, you actually lose some information. So I hope that helps. Cool. So sorry, I was talking about decision making. So logical, not taking into account a lot of the other things. Emotion's actually a big piece. And one of the things that I learned is that without emotion, everything is equal. So it's kind of a weird statement. So what I realized with that is, if you have two options, even if you know that option B is better than option A, if you feel exactly the same about both of them, you won't make a decision. That is actually because us as humans, we've actually evolved to make decisions not based on our prefrontal cortex. Most of the decision making actually happens more in kind of the primitive brain, right? So that's why you hear a lot of people saying like, hey, that feels like the right choice. And right and wrong, very obvious, but people, you can actually see this in psychology. Like murderers or serial killers, like they know what is right and what's wrong, but they still do certain things because sometimes they don't have that emotional capacity thing. So prefrontal cortex directs decision, but it doesn't actually make the decision, right? So what you'll notice is decision making is really grounded in your experience, your history related to the decision, the values that you have, kind of how you feel about something as well. So there are a lot of factors that go into decision making that sometimes people don't consider. So the quick analogy over here is, if you've seen the Simon Sinek video, if you have not, definitely go watch it. But if you have seen it, he gives the example of how Apple's messaging is so much more convincing. And if you look at Apple, they basically sell the same type of products. They sell laptops, they sell MP3 players, they have the same access to talent, they have the same access to agencies, medias, consultant. So there's nothing really different from them if you look at physical limitations. But what really sets them apart is how they communicate. So let's take an example. So Apple might say, hey, you know what? We built computers. Our computers are easy to use, beautifully designed. Do you want to buy one? Doesn't sound very compelling. But if you flip the messaging around and you communicate with the why, with kind of the motive behind it, and they say, hey, Apple, what we do is we're trying to challenge the status quo. We are all about helping people do things differently. And we do that by creating computers that are beautifully designed and easy to use. And we so happen to produce computers. Do you want to buy one? You can see how just that small flip actually makes the messaging a lot more convincing, because it's really speaking to that why, to that value. So that's kind of the concept behind that. It's kind of incorporating more of the emotion, more of the mission, more of the why into the messaging, instead of just focusing on the pros and cons. Value-based decision making. So I like to really touch on this because I feel like values is the main kind of center point for me. We as a lot of people, and I think, sorry, I'm kind of messing up my words, but a lot of people, when they're brought up, they are brought up to make decisions based on pros and cons. They don't really understand why they have pros and cons. But what a lot of people don't realize is that my pros and cons might be different from your pros and cons. That's because we have different values. So the example over here is, let's say you have job A, work at a startup, or job B, bit my mouth, work at a corporation. So if it's a startup, high risk, but also high reward, high opportunity. Maybe you might not realize that, but no work-life balance. But you have a high opportunity to grow very quickly because you're learning a lot of new things. Job B has its own benefit, pros and cons as well. So secure income, reputable company, stable work schedule, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. You get weekends off. Stable role. Maybe that's a good or bad thing. I mean, it might take you a few years to get promoted, but at the same time, there's less risk. You might not get fired or lose your job, right? So if you can see over here, let's say John, if I now know his values, if his values are family, health, security, growth, it's quite perceivable that John will actually prefer to work at the corporation. Because if he cares about security and growth and his family and his health, having that stable job, having that regular schedule really allows him to spend time with his family, spend time on himself, be a bit more healthy, have a more balanced lifestyle, right? So if those are his values, he would probably lean in favor of the corporate job. So again, it's like there's no right or wrong decision. It's just different people have different values. So when you're actually trying to convince or persuade someone to do something, you want to really understand who you're speaking to, what their values are, especially even if it's in a company context, if you're trying to sell B2B. Because like I mentioned again, decision makers are people. They're not the organization. So if you understand how people make decisions, then you can better convince them and resonate with them by actually speaking to their values. Another quick tip is, I learned this in sales, so decision threshold. So it applies not only to converting sales clients, but the idea is usually whatever you're trying to do when it comes to persuasion is you're trying to get people to take some form of change. You're trying to get them to change their mindset or take some action. And what happens is people tend to resist change. And what happens is internally, maybe even subconsciously for a lot of people, when they're considering change, they're balancing two things. They're thinking about what's the cost of staying the same versus what's the cost of changing. And what happens is if the cost of staying the same exceeds the cost of changing, then they will want to change. Because let's say, for example, if they have a problem, and let's say, for example, the problem is right now, when I send emails, it takes me a lot of time, right? So I have, let's say, a mailing list of 50 people, and every time I send an email, it takes me a minute per email. So there's a cost of staying the same, cost of not adopting a new technology. And then what's the cost of changing? The cost of changing is, oh, maybe I need to learn how to use this new software. Maybe I need to import my whole database into the software. Maybe I need to pay some fees for it. So you can see here, if the cost of staying the same exceeds the cost of changing, then I'll be like, okay, it makes more sense for me to use this software because I'm saving so much more time. It's just so much more convenient for me. So the idea is, if you have a product or service, or if you're whatever you're trying to convince someone to do, you want to try to reduce it or change so that you can really highlight, either dig into the pain points, focus on really highlighting the cost of staying the same, because sometimes people don't realize what are the costs of staying the same, right? People don't realize that what they're losing out on: opportunity, time, maybe they're spending more money trying to solve this problem, things like that. So what are the costs, really bringing that out? Or the other option is bringing down the cost of changing. So to bring down the cost of changing, there's this framework or concept called the thin edge of the wedge. It's basically like a door wedge, right? Kind of, I don't know if I can, like that. So you want to try to get the thin part in so that you can get them to take a small action. So it's much easier for you to get on to the next step. So I'll give an example. So one example is here, there's this company in Vancouver called Traction on Demand. And what they do is they help companies implement this thing called Salesforce. If you're not familiar with Salesforce, it's basically a CRM, customer relationship management tool for a company. So what it does is companies deal with a lot of clients, a lot of customers, and they need to be able to track all their clients, all their many customers, because, you know, if let's say this sales rep is sick, I need to know where the conversation left off, or I need to know, oh, you know what, it's this customer's birthday. So all of that kind of information all goes to the CRM. So it is usually a very big piece of software. There's a high cost of changing CRM tools because once you've input all the data for your customer, and if you try to get them to change to another CRM, it's a big challenge because they need to export all the data, import it into this new software. You need to retrain everyone in the organization. So it's very high cost of changing. So what they did as Traction on Demand is they actually tried to bring that down, bring the cost down, bring the risk down. So they actually started by offering this report. So what they would do is, usually companies need to start to think about changing CRM when they start to notice that their existing CRM is not powerful enough to track everything that they need to track. And what they do is they say, hey, you know what? We will come in, we will do a consultation with you, it is only $5,000, and that they specifically price at $5,000 because it's a lot more affordable, or it falls within the budget for the decision maker to say, okay, I'll spend $5,000 to get this report, instead of having to escalate that to, like, let's say finance department or tech department or things like that. So again, you're trying to make it as easy as possible for them to change. So small report, $5,000. We compare all the different CRM solutions for you based on your company situation. So we'll do a deep analysis of the company. We'll figure out what your needs are, and then we'll give you different solutions. And then it's up to you what you want to do with this report. So the report itself is valuable. It's not like a kind of a simple upsell, right? Companies can actually take the report and they can go out and use their own solutions. But the idea is, because they already have this relationship with Traction on Demand, they now know that Traction already understands their needs. Therefore, it's easier for them to use Salesforce, which Traction is supporting, with implementation. So that's kind of like the thin edge of the wedge. Like, you come in, you get people hooked on your product or service, and then you kind of upsell them in the future. Another great example is I mentioned yet another mail merge, the tool that I use to do the email sending. The way that they do it and how they hook you is you can use their tool. It's free, but you can only send 25 emails with the tool. And once you go over 25 emails, you need to start paying. So obviously, most of the time when you're doing a mail merge, you're sending to a list of more than 25 emails. So you send to the 25, it gets blocked off, you get 25 a day, and then you need to wait till the next day to do another mail merge. So if you're really in dire need of using the tool, then you'll upgrade right away. So that's kind of the thin edge of the wedge, right? Great, sorry, a lot of stuff. So maybe this is the last point I will talk about, and then the rest can just be takeaway slides. I love this framework that was introduced to me by this lady named Stephanie Sharp. She runs this company called F, and then what was the sign for it? F*Nance, like fuck finance kind of thing. But basically, the framework that she uses is, she comes from a rich background in negotiations, so she would help negotiate some big government contracts and stuff. And this framework that she looks at is, when people are making decisions, there are a lot of things that go into the decision that are not monetary related. So these are all the other things that are not money related. So status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And what that means is status. First thing is, when people are making a decision, they want to be able to be seen in such a way where they feel more important than others, right? So does this decision help elevate their status, right? Does it affect their status? Certainty. What is the predictability of the outcome, right? If they are uncertain of the outcome of results that your product or service might give them, then they hesitate to take action, right? So can you build in or comfort them by addressing certainty? Autonomy. People like to feel like they have control over how it's going to shape up. So for example, if you say like, okay, let's work on this project, you need to be able to give them a sense that this project is not just you delivering the product for them, but it might be more collaborative. Like, we'll come up with a solution together. You'll have a say on when it gets implemented, things like that. So creating that sense of control for them. Relatedness. So whether or not they feel like they can relate to you, whether or not they feel that you really understand them. So that's basic rapport. Fairness. Whether or not they feel like it's a fair deal, or whether it's fair for them, whether it's fair in terms of what you're offering in terms of value. Is there a fair exchange of value? Are you offering market rate? Things like that. So these are all some other factors that come into consideration. So, a lot of stuff. I don't want to overwhelm you with stuff, but depending on the context of what you're trying to negotiate, it might help just kind of give you some different ideas on how to position yourself with people. So I think I'm going to stop there because it's 7:30. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the session. A lot of fun, a lot of stuff, and we have a lot more stuff coming up in the next few weeks as well. So yes, if you want slides, shoot me an email. I'll leave that up there. Again, if you want to donate, I very much appreciate that. Feel free to send an e-transfer to my email. And I do have a PayPal account as well, so I don't know how to do donations through PayPal, but don't worry about that. So yeah, that's about it. Enjoy the rest of your evening and stay safe, stay healthy. Gonna hang around for maybe 5 more minutes for any additional questions, but otherwise feel free to tune out. Oh yes, I'll probably post a recording on YouTube. But yes, send me an email if you want to record it as well. Okay, I think I will be ending the meeting right now. I can hear my baby crying. All right, see you all. Have a good night.